I am running.
He's out,
on the
he's
ballot.
in, and polls say he is now closing the gap with Linda McMahon. Congressman Rob Simmons is here to talk about his push to the primary. Also, Lieutenant Governor Michael Fedeli is looking for a promotion. He is putting the heat on in the GOP primary for governor. And we're going to meet Jerry Garcia. He is running for Secretary of the State. You're watching The Real Story. I'm Lori Perez. Just a little while ago, Rob Simmons was on the ballot, but pretty much off the campaign trail in the race for U.S. Senate, having curtailed his campaign after Linda McMahon won the GOP endorsement at the party convention. But now he is back and stronger than ever. The latest Quinnipiac University poll shows Simmons is cutting into McMahon's lead in the Republican Senate primary campaign. He now trails McMahon by 17 percentage points. He was down 27 points in July. He's here now to tell us how he is doing it. Thank you, Congressman, for being here.
Well, thank you, Lori, for having me on the show. I truly appreciate it.
No problem. First of all, tell us about how you made the decision to get full force back into the race and whether you're surprised by this most recent polling.
Well, two things. First of all, we did curtail the campaign after the convention. It was disappointing not to have the support of my party leadership. But I had pledged that I really didn't want to run an expensive and a divisive primary. So we curtailed the campaign. We let the staff go. But out of respect for the 46% of the party leadership who supported me at the convention, we did stay on the ballot. Mm-hmm. And in my statement at the time, I said, we're going to stay on the ballot. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that was clearly stated, and we posted the statement on my webpage. Over the intervening 2 months, there was really very little activity by the other candidates. No debates, no panel shows, no activity. And as I traveled around the state helping my fellow Republicans with their races, people would say, can I write you in? Are you going to do an independent party run? I said, no, I'm on the ballot. And as time went on, more and more people said, you've got to say that. You've got to let people know. You've got to let people know there's a choice. And that's exactly what we're doing.
And you did that. And within days, you picked up some pretty substantial media endorsements. Were you surprised by that?
Well, I got the Hartford Courant, the New London Day, the Norwich Bulletin, and I was very happy to get those endorsements. But what they pointed out in each of the endorsements is I'm the only candidate that has any experience in doing the job.
Yeah.
And at a time when we're facing critical issues in Afghanistan, in Iraq, jobs, unemployment, foreclosures, we need somebody in the U.S. Senate who knows how to get it done from day one.
But isn't there also something, a lot of the candidates that we have coming on the show, not only in this race, but in a lot of the races, they're trying to play this I'm the outsider card, we don't need another career politician. I mean, isn't there something to maybe saying, get some new blood in there, new perspective, new angles?
Well, you can say that, but if you're getting on an airplane in New York City and flying up and hit a bunch of geese, do you want Sully in the cockpit or somebody who's never flown before?
Yeah, that's a good.
And what I say is simple. I left Congress in 2006. I was business advocate for 2 years. For the last 2 years, I've been running in the Senate race. So I've got a lot of diverse experience. I'm a military officer. I served in Vietnam. Intelligence experience, and I know how to legislate good public policy. I worked with Team Connecticut to save the submarine base. All of these attributes make me the most experienced and qualified person to get the job done.
Let's talk about your efforts to save the sub base because, undoubtedly the economy is going to be the key issue in a lot of these elections. And here in Connecticut, we not only need to bring jobs to Connecticut, but we need to save the ones that we have. And we've had some trouble keeping the contracts, keeping the sub bases. What else can you do to make sure that we have a lock on these industries?
Well, as a member of the Armed Services Committee, I made sure that Sikorsky was getting good contracts for the Black Hawk. I worked hard with Pratt Whitney on the Joint Strike Fighter. Connecticut has a big defense industry. It's a high-tech industry with high-tech jobs. I am plugged in for that. I'm a military officer. I served in Washington, D.C. in the U.S. Senate with Senator Goldwater and Senator Chafee in my 6 years in Congress. I was instrumental in saving the sub-base and keeping these industries alive. And people know that. It's a solid record that I can take to the U.S. Senate to continue to bring these jobs jobs back to Connecticut.
What other industries do you think that Connecticut should be courting?
High-tech industries and what we call the knowledge corridor, that runs from Springfield, Massachusetts down to New Haven. Mm-hmm. As business advocate, I promoted the aerospace industry, biotech, pharmaceuticals, a whole range of high-tech entrepreneurial industries located in that central core of Connecticut where we can continue to build with R&D tax credits and other supports.
We're talking about your military experience. What do you think of President Obama's military strategy?
Well, I am very troubled by his strategy in Iraq. I feel that by putting a deadline out there, he really put a target on our troops. That was not a good idea. I think
even though most people wanted that, most people wanted to hear that?
I think that you never announce to your enemy exactly what your plans are. It's not a good idea. I think the surge in Afghanistan is not working. I'd like to see a reduction of forces, a reduction of the conventional force footprint in Afghanistan, and more focus on special operations. Afghanistan is a tribal a country of tribes with a tradition of resisting outsiders and foreigners. And so when you have tens of thousands of American troops storming around in uniform, it puts them at risk, and it doesn't necessarily accomplish our goals.
Linda McMahon has said that she wanted to be on the Armed Services Committee.
Well, of course.
Do you think, when you hear that, what do you think?
Well, I think that's all very fine, but she doesn't have any military experience, no military background. She simply knows that through polling, that's an important committee for our state. I served on that committee 6 years very successfully. I had a very solid position on the committee, and it's not just a question of sitting on the committee. You've got to know the business. You've got to know the military business, which is something that I do know very well.
Why do you think that she has been able to get a lot of momentum and support?
Well, I think when you spend $24 million on advertising over the course of 9 months, you should be able to get a lot of support. But the problem that I see in the most recent Quinnipiac poll is that her unfavorables are almost as high as her favorables. In other words, all that positive expenditure of funds has not really given her a clear sense of favorability among the Connecticut voters. And when it comes to her head-to-head and me head-to-head with Dick Blumenthal, guess what? Again, we're pretty even. And that means I could be more competitive against Dick Blumenthal than she can in spite of her expenditure of money.
Because in what ways do you think you'll be more competitive?
Well, one of the ways I'll be more competitive is if you look at this ribbon bar, you'll see that I actually served in Vietnam. And I think that's an important issue because it's a character issue. Connecticut has almost 10% of its population as veterans. We have a large veteran population, and they honor the service of those who have served overseas, as well as they honor the service of those who served in the reserves here. But you can't get those roles confused. And Dick Blumenthal is vulnerable on that point.
We were talking about negativity, not particularly maybe in this race, but what do you think about some of the tactics that have been used by Mrs. McMahon against Dick Blumenthal?
Well, look, I said I didn't want to run a divisive and a negative primary, and I've been true to my word. Some people say the negative ads work. Maybe they do. But I think a positive message is also important, and a message that goes to the heart of my life as a public servant, my life as a soldier, my life of serving my people, and winning these races and being effective once I occupy the position.
Let me ask you a question that maybe you haven't been asked along the trail yet. But, looking back, why do you think that you lost the seat to Joe Courtney?
Very simply, in the year 2006, the generic vote against Republicans was about 28%. Now, I served as a Republican in the most Democrat district in America held by a Republican, but usually the generic vote against the Republican was about 12 points. When it got to 28 points, it was very hard to win. But I have to say, I don't appreciate the fact that Mrs. McMahon gave a ton of money to the Democrats that year. That didn't help.
Do you think you're a safe choice? Do you think of that as a derogatory
I think that I'm a good choice because I have a record and people know what I've been able to do. Yes, you can pull a vote here or a co-sponsorship there out of thousands and thousands of votes and try to build a case. But in the aggregate, I'm a Republican who has been able to win in Connecticut, who has been able to represent his constituents in Washington, D.C. successfully. And in these tough times, Lori, and these are tough times, I'm concerned about the future of my country, and we need somebody who can make it right and who knows how to do it from day one.
We have running out of time. We're out of time, actually, but just quickly, do you think you're going to pull this off?
You bet. With the help of the people.
All right. We wish you good luck. Thank you very much for spending time with us today.
Thank you. You're terrific.
Thanks a lot, Rob. Up next, Republican candidate for governor Mike Fedeli. We're going to talk to him.
Danbury. He is the longest serving, I would say,